All right, let's get into one of the strangest true stories you'll ever hear. It's a story packed with desperation, poverty, an absolutely unbreakable widow, and, well, one of the most famous people to ever live, Charlie Chaplin. But the thing is, this story doesn't really start with his life. The real story kicks off right after he died.
It's a question you've probably never even thought to ask, right? Chaplin passed away peacefully on Christmas Day in 1977 over in Switzerland. He was 88, laid to rest in this tiny village cemetery. A quiet end for a man who made the entire world laugh. But, and this is a big but, the story was far from over.
Yeah, you heard me correctly. A mere 10 weeks after the funeral, a couple of grave robbers sneak into the cemetery in the dead of night, dig up Chaplin's entire coffin, and just vanish with it. This wasn't some kind of sick prank. This was the start of a real-life drama that was as bizarre as it was darkly funny.
You know, what's so cool about the play this explainer is based on is how it imagines Chaplin himself reacting to all this absurdity. And this quote, it just nails the tone of everything that happened next. It's a story so wild, it honestly feels like it could have been pulled from one of his own silent films.
So who on earth would do something like this? You're probably picturing some criminal masterminds, right? Well, think again. This was the work of two unemployed immigrants who were just completely at the end of their rope.
Let's meet this very unlikely pair. First, you've got Roman Wardas. He was the young, impulsive engine of this whole scheme, a guy who actually grew up loving Chaplin's movies. Then there's Gantscho Ganev. He was the older, more reluctant partner, the one whose conscience was just eating him alive. And for both of them, this wasn't about getting rich. It was about a desperate, misguided attempt to help their families.
And this is where the story gets just tragically ironic. These guys deeply admired the man whose grave they were robbing. They had somehow convinced themselves that Chaplin, a man who literally clawed his way out of extreme poverty, would somehow get it, that he would understand their desperation.
But here's the thing. The criminals made one huge, critical miscalculation. They figured Chaplin's widow, Oona Chaplin, would be an easy target. Oh boy, were they wrong.
See, Oona Chaplin, she was anything but fragile. This was the daughter of a famous playwright who had lived her entire life in the public spotlight. She stood by her husband through scandals and even exile. She was a woman of incredible strength and composure. A couple of guys with shovels weren't about to shake her.
So this was the price tag they put on a stolen legend. 600,000 Swiss francs. To put that in perspective, that's about $1.5 million today. Roman and Gantscho were sure that for a woman with her kind of money, this would be a small price to get her husband back.
And what did Oona do? Did she panic? Did she call the bank? Nope. Her response was instant, and it was a brick wall. She flat out refused to even negotiate. She famously told the police Charlie would have found this ridiculous, and that one decision, it completely torched the criminals' plan and kicked off a very tense standoff.
Oona's refusal turned what the thieves hoped would be a quick and easy payday into a grueling 11-week-long cat-and-mouse game with the Swiss police. This timeline really shows you how the whole drama played out. It starts on March 2nd with the theft. Just 3 days later, Oona gets the letter and says, no deal. And for the next 2.5 months, you can just feel the desperation ramping up on one side, while on the other, the police are patiently, methodically closing the net.
And all this time, the police are doing some seriously good, old-fashioned detective work. They're mapping out all these calls from different payphones. An accent expert listens in and figures out the main caller is probably Polish. And all the while, Oona is shrewdly insisting on keeping the press in the dark, which starved the criminals of the public pressure they were counting on.
Okay, so it all comes down to this. One final phone call. After weeks of these tense, short conversations, the police were finally ready. They had their trap set, and they were listening in as the frantic Roman made one last attempt to break the immovable Oona.
So Roman gets on the phone, trying to sound all tough. The demand stands, or else. And Oona, she just cuts right through it. Instead of fear, she hits him with intelligence. Otherwise what? You have my husband, he's in a field, I'm pretty sure it's a cornfield. Can you just imagine his face? She completely seized control of the conversation.
And then she did something absolutely nobody saw coming. She stopped being the victim and showed compassion. She started talking to Roman about Charlie's own childhood, about his poverty.
She connected with him, not as a criminal, but just as another person in a desperate situation.
And that right there was her masterstroke. That unexpected kindness, it totally disarmed Roman. It kept him on the phone, confused for just long enough. And that's all the police needed. They got the trace, and within minutes, it was game over. Roman and Gantscho were arrested without a fight.
So, the arrests are made, but what happens next? Well, the end of this story is just as weirdly fitting, just as Chaplin-esque as the rest of it.
So here's the final tally. Roman, the mastermind, got hit with 4.5 years of hard labor. Gantscho, the reluctant accomplice with the guilty conscience, he got a much lighter 18-month suspended sentence. Chaplin's coffin? Yep, they found it right where they'd left it, buried in a cornfield. And this time, they weren't taking any chances. He was reburied under a thick slab of concrete.
But this right here, is the part that really shows you who Oona Chaplin was. Even after everything they put her through, she didn't want revenge. She actually said she hoped the men would get help and find jobs after they served their time. I mean, what a remarkable display of humanity.
And that really is the perfect thought to end on, isn't it? Was this story a tragedy born from desperation, or was it a dark comedy of errors? The truth is, like one of Chaplin's own movies, it was both. A strange, sad, and, you have to admit, a pretty funny story about what happens when real life gets way more absurd than fiction.